Welcome to the Homeschool Show from North Carolinians for Home Education. Our goal is to help you homeschool with confidence and joy. I'm your host, Matthew McDill, and we have a very special co-host today, Isaac McDill. What are you doing in here, Isaac? So all my normal co-hosts couldn't come today, so I just grabbed Isaac to be our co-host today. It's going to be fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, tell us what we're going to do today.
Today on Homeschool News, we'll give you some important updates on the Homeschool Show, tell you how to close your homeschool. In Homeschool Conversations, we'll have a conversation with Penny Mays, who was a speaker at this year's Thrive Conference.
Mm-hmm.
She is an art teacher and homeschool mom who has created a wonderful way to integrate hands-on art projects with art history and history unit studies. In Homeschool Helps with Amanda, Amanda continues her discussion of various homeschool approaches by taking a closer look at unit studies.
All right, and we're going to switch up our order just a little bit and go ahead and have our conversation with Penny first. Penny Mays is a 20-year homeschool veteran mom who loves integrating history with art history and hands-on art projects through streaming video at Take Time for Art. Her passion is to bring history to life with visual storytelling through art and hands-on art projects. When she isn't making entertaining videos for Take Time for Art, she is a wife, mother, and grandmother. Penny also is a speaker and creator, and by the way, she's a speaker at this year's Thrive Conference. As Isaac already said, we're so glad to have her there. Creator of hands-on demonstrations for homeschool events. She holds her BFA in studio art and master's degree in education. Welcome to the show, Penny.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here, Matthew and Isaac. Thank you for that introduction, Isaac.
You're welcome.
So I'm glad it really worked out neat that Amanda in our help segment is going to be talking about unit studies today. So that's
Yes.
going to fit right in, isn't it?
Yes, that's perfect. So yes, we do unit studies and Take Time for Art and help parents add those hands-on to their unit studies. So I am also delighted about that. We try very hard to integrate with homeschool unit studies and help parents bring hands-on and visuals to what they're studying in their units, particularly their history unit studies.
So can you tell me a little bit about how this started in the sense of, I guess, the need that you were seeing or why you wanted to start creating this?
Yeah, well, as you said before, I'm a 20-year homeschool veteran, and to be honest with you, this is what I wanted when I was homeschooling my children.
Okay.
I wanted to bring them more visuals. I wanted to bring, when we were studying history, I wanted more visuals in the history unit studies we were doing. I wanted them to get a feel for the cultural and the visual of an era, and I wanted to do it through art. I'm an art teacher, and I knew that there were wonderful art history. There was wonderful art history and art paintings and sculptures that would give you a feel for that era. But you know what? That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And going through the art history books, half the time you wanted to cover one page while you showed your children the other page because you didn't want to expose them to too much nudity or whatever it was in those art history books that you might find objectionable. So I wanted to create something for homeschoolers that would incorporate the art, the culture, that was vetted art history, that was easy to access, and would also integrate with that art history and with that history have integrated hands-on art projects. So in other words, what we do at Take Time for Art is we tell the story of history using the art and the art history, and then based on that art and that history that we've seen, we make hands-on art projects. I like to say we try to make real art based on real art. And so we want it to be meaningful, and we want it the art that we do to help children remember what they've studied.
So I know we want to spend a lot of time on why hands-on learning is so helpful, but I want to ask one other question. I think one of your drives, and as I saw on your website, is that you also wanted to create these projects from a Christian worldview. Talk about why that's important and how it affects the types of projects you're doing.
So when you tell the story of history, I think it's important to tell as much as possible God's story of history. And so we're approaching it from a Christian worldview. So when I'm incorporating, for instance, telling the story of the Greek and Persian wars, we also weave into it the story of Esther, because that was that story in the Bible was was part of the history of the wars with Greece and Persia, and it's that interweaving of the story of history and God's story that He is also telling through the Bible of history. I think that that's really important, because if you're not telling God's story along with history, you're really not telling the truth of history. Also, there's so much wonderful, wonderful biblical art out there. I think it's really important to expose children to it, because that art also helps give them wonderful images of biblical stories. And I love being able to expose children to that and to give them a taste and appreciation for biblical art.
That's great. I love that. As I often say, all education comes from a worldview, and history and art are really at the top of that, really being affected by that. So that's wonderful. I see that your workshop that you did at the conference, we're so glad you were there, was the benefits of hands-on education. So hint, it makes you smarter. That was in the title as well. So tell us about that. Tell us some of the ways, some of these benefits.
Well, hands-on, first of all, the first thing I think about when I think about hands-on education is simply that it's fun. I mean, that's not at the top of the list when you're talking about making your child smarter, but I think that that's one of the best reasons to incorporate hands-on into your homeschool. If you can bring fun into your homeschool, you've just made your homeschool day a whole lot easier and a whole lot better for everyone in your family. But past that, hands-on can help you with reading comprehension. Believe it or not, we can go in more detail if you want to. It helps you remember better. Hands-on helps with critical thinking skills. It helps your students stay engaged. And it also helps with independent learning. Those are the topics that I talked about in my workshop, and maybe we can unpack a few of those if you'd like.
Yeah, let's start with remembering. I know I had one of my kids who just couldn't remember anything we ever did, and I think I'm exaggerating probably, but I know that there are certain students and parents who struggle with that. We just read this chapter and you can't tell me anything about it. So let's go into the remembering, how it helps kids learn and remember what they're learning.
Well, when you're using hands-on projects, you're using your hands as well as, let me back up. I tell people the hand is connected to the brain. So when you're using pencil and paper or you're reading, you're using one part of your brain. But when you add into that more visuals and hands-on, you're using other parts of your brain. And the more parts of the brain that you use, the more places you're going to be able to store memories. Okay. So with pencil and paper and reading, you're attempting to store memories in certain areas of the brain. But when you use hands-on, you're storing, and visuals, you're storing in other areas of the brain. And those areas connect to other areas of the brain. And that's the way we're building the brain. You're making connections from one area of the brain to another area of the brain so that that stored memory expands your memory. I hope I'm making sense here, but
Yeah.
you're allowing your brain to access more areas to build your memory.
And I saw your article in the old schoolhouse where you mentioned a statistic or something, or it was a result of a study where people remembered more when they were doodling.
Right. If you doodle, you have 79% more chance of remembering what you were just simply listening to in a lecture. Just using your
Right. It's
hands
amazing.
can help you just remember and use that extra storage in your brain. And therefore, by using hands-on, it's making us smarter.
And even better if what you're doing with your hands is actually connected to the content and helps solidify that. That's great.
Exactly.
So let's talk more about the critical thinking aspect. That sounds interesting.
Well, let's define critical thinking. Critical thinking, excuse me, is the ability to make decisions and to solve problems based on investigations. It also based on your knowledge and based on your experience. So when you use hands-on, it gives your children the opportunity to experience problems and to solve problems. So they're actually practicing critical thinking when they're doing hands-on projects. They're having to make decisions. They're having to figure out, will this material work with that material? They're having perhaps to work with another student and do some type of group project when they're doing a hands-on project. They're having to use some leadership skills. It's all of this is involved in critical thinking, and all of the decisions and bringing in what you know and making a decision about what's best for a situation. Hands-on can really help build those critical thinking muscles in a way, again, that pencil and paper and reading can't. And please don't misunderstand me. Reading is a wonderful thing, and I'm an avid reader, and I'm also an avid writer. But hands-on is using that piece of the brain that sometimes we miss in homeschooling when we are very busy and just pull out the workbooks.
Right.
It is a way to really engage your child's brain and their memory, just in a way that pencil and paper just can't do for you.
So I just realized that maybe some of our listeners are just wondering what these hands-on projects are. You know, I mean, we keep saying that as a very general thing. Could you give us some examples of some different types of things we would do?
Okay, for instance, let's talk about if you are doing a unit study on cells and you read about the cells and you even look at the pictures, perhaps in a textbook. Those are great, but are those two, that's two ways to study cells, right? But you want your child to remember the parts of the cell. Maybe you go to a video. That's another way to give them some really good visuals. And it's an excellent thing to do. And maybe they actually see cells divide. And in the video, they talk about the different parts of the cell. But then to really seal the deal, what I would suggest is perhaps getting modeling clay and building a cell and labeling those pieces of the cell, those parts of the cell, by writing it down, sticking a pen in that piece of paper, in that modeling clay with every single part. That not only gives them a 3D visual model of the cell, but by adding in the written part with that hands-on project, it's connecting all those parts of the brain, and it's going to help your child really remember it.
That's great. And we've been talking to Penny Mays at Take Time for Art, and you can go to taketimeforart.com to find out more and contact her. Is that the best thing to do?
You can, and we would love to. You can contact me through the contact form. We try very hard to make hands-on an open and go, easy to use product for every single homeschool family, simply because I was a busy homeschool mom
Right.
back in the day, and I understand that getting hands-on is not that easy.
Right.
But we try to make it an easy, open and go product to use in your homeschool. So please contact me.
Yeah, I think that's great. You're right. Moms have their own abilities and propensities, and some of them are super crafty and want to make that stuff, and some of them would like for you to make it up for them. And
exactly.
It really helps out. So I think this is an excellent resource. And so I hope if you are our listeners this is something that would be interesting to you, then check that out. Penny, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Isaac.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right. That was great talking to Penny. We're going to back up now and talk about our news segment. And the first thing is we have some important news about the show. So we're talking about what's going on right here. And if you are a part of the listening audience on the radio, if you've been listening to News Talk WSIC, we've been on for 2 seasons now, so for almost a couple of years. And we've loved being here. But we will not be on the air here starting in July. And so we wanted to let you know that the show will continue. And you can go to nche.com/The Homeschool Show and find out where we are on YouTube and podcasts. And we're going to continue the show, and you can stay connected with us. In July, we're going to do something a little bit different for the 4 episodes there. We're going to take the highest rated, highest listens for season 2 and show you some of those again. So we're going to have some highlights in July. And you can be ready for season 3, which will start up August the 7th. So watch out for that. August 7th, we'll have season 3 taking place. All right, one more, another tip I want to give you. We haven't talked about this on the show, and that is you need to remember to close your homeschool. You may not be aware of this, but the homeschool law in North Carolina requires you to close your homeschool when you're finished homeschooling. And so some of you have just graduated your last ones, or maybe you've decided to put your kids back in school. Who knows what it would be, but you need to go ahead and do that. It's real easy to do. You can go to the North Carolina Division of Non-Public Education website. It's easy to Google that and find it, or you can go give them a call at 984-236-0110 and let them know that you are closing your homeschool. All right, and we do have a couple of retreats coming up. Isaac, why don't you tell us about them?
There will be a dad's retreat at Caraway Conference Center near Asheboro on September 29th and 30th. Visit nche.com/dads-retreat to learn more and register. And there will be a mom's retreat also at Caraway Conference Center on October 13th through 14th. Visit nche.com/moms-retreat to learn more and register. Early bird prices end August 11th.
That's right. And the Moms Retreat is really growing, has been a great success. So many moms love it. The Dad's Retreat is brand new. We haven't had one. And so if you want to get in on the inaugural Dad's Retreat, then check that out, and we would love to have you be a part. All right, let's go to Homeschool Helps with Amanda. She continues her discussion of the various homeschool approaches and is going to take a closer look at unit studies.
Welcome to Homeschool Helps with Amanda. I'm Amanda Wares, Homeschool Helps Director with NCAG. So to continue on with our series on different approaches to homeschooling, we've got 2 left, this week and next week. Today we are talking about unit studies, the unit study approach to homeschooling. Now, what are unit studies? Unit studies are overviews of a particular topic or a theme where you study every subject as related to that topic or theme. You might also hear, especially in the public school world, thematic units. So that's where that comes from. Unit studies can be focused on a specific subject, but usually you will study one subject and look at it, one topic, and look at all the different school subjects related to that topic. For example, if you wanted to study bees, obviously the science is easy, right? You can talk about insects, you can talk about classification, you can talk about the different parts of the body of a bee, all different kinds of things, how the life cycle of a bee, and on and on and on. You can have art. You can draw bees or things related to bees. You can talk about shapes, the honeycomb shape. You can count and do math with bee-related things. You can read literature that is related to the bee or honey. And for other language arts things, you could do narration related to what you've read about the bees. You could have spelling lists that are bee related. You could do a book report. The possibilities are endless, but that would be how you would approach a unit study. Now, typically unit studies take advantage of some particular things to make them work, like living books, hands-on activities, cooking, art, costumes, games, crafts. Again, possibilities are endless. Field trips are great with unit studies and other forms of investigation, science experiments, so many different ideas out there. Now, who does this method work for? It works really, really well for families who maybe are homeschooling children of multiple ages. It's a great way to have that kind of one-room schoolhouse feel where you're all studying the same thing, but maybe at different levels. Works great for maybe kids on the autism spectrum who hyper-focus or have really deep interest in one particular subject at a time. For homeschooling parents who really want to create their own curriculum or follow their child's particular interests. Maybe it would be great for homeschoolers who just want to try something different or break up their more traditional studies at other times. Maybe they don't want to do unit studies all the time, but just fit them in here and there as variety. The cons of a unit study approach would be it could be time intensive to plan or to gather supplies if you're doing a lot of different activities. And some topics may lend themselves more to studying that way than others. So it may not flow as naturally all the time as you want it to. Now, there are many unit study curricula out there. You just have to Google homeschool unit study, and you will come up with many different sources of unit studies that you could buy. Some are even for free out there, but there are some really popular curricula that use this type of learning. 5 in a Row is one that's been around for a long time, and it is just wonderful. Beautiful Feet is another one. Konos is one. It was one of the earliest homeschool curriculums, but it really does utilize this unit study approach to learning. And My Father's World does utilize some unit study learning, especially the My Father's World kindergarten program. So, is unit study for you, for your family? I really hope that helps today.
Thanks for joining us this week. We'd love to hear from you. Send your questions and feedback to the Homeschool Show at nche.com. Please help others find this show by subscribing, rating, and leaving other reviews on Apple Podcasts and YouTube. If you think this show will be helpful to your friends and family, please let them know about it. To learn how to subscribe to your show, to our show, as a podcast and on YouTube, visit nche.com/The Homeschool Show.
You think they should start their own show?
No.
They might as well. Did you enjoy being on the show? Maybe we'll do one more episode together. Maybe I'll have you come back, all right?
All right.
Okay, until next week, continue to homeschool with confidence and joy.